So she said to Jacob, give me children or I will die. That is a little bit dramatic. You marry somebody and then they wake up next to you and they're like, Joe, 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 Joe. Hey you guys, welcome back to the Mouthpiece Podcast. My name is Bonga and I am your host. We're on week 3. I'm very excited that we are back. We are here. You guys almost didn't see me this week because I was low-key, just a little bit going through it. So but we're here by God's grace because we have to show up. But I hope you guys are doing well this week. I definitely am today. Maybe not this week, but today. So yeah, I want to speak about comparison because I think this is like a pandemic that plagues a lot of us, especially young people, especially when you see certain things on social media and you're kind of just thinking like, oh my gosh, am I behind? What's going on? What's happening with me? So I just wanted to talk about that because that has sort of been the theme of my life recently. Well, maybe not the theme, that's a bit dramatic, but like it's been something that has been very loud in my mind and in my spirit lately. So I just wanted to see an example or speak about an example in the word that I know of. So yeah, without wasting any more time, let's get into it. We're going to be looking at Genesis 30, Genesis 29 and Genesis 30, and it's the story of Leah and Rachel. So for context, just before we start reading the reference scripture, the story of Leah and Rachel, Jacob wants to marry Rachel. He is fighting for his life for 7 years. Laban, Rachel and Leah's father, promises Jacob that like, hey, you can marry my daughter if you work just work for 7 years. He does that, gets the wrong woman, Leah. He's vexed. Then Laban says, okay, another 7 years. And Laban's excuse was that they can't marry the youngest daughter before they marry out the oldest daughter. So that was sort of the excuse. Yeah, because now he's married to Leah. He has to work another 7 years to get Rachel. Works the 7 years, gets Rachel. They're married. Okay. And then we're going to start from Genesis 29 from verse 31. I don't know if I should read the whole thing. Should I? Let's see. Okay, this is another one of those long passages. This one is probably even longer than last week's one, but we're going to read it anyway. Genesis 29 verse 31. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, it is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now. She conceived again. And when she gave birth to a son, she said, because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too. So she named him Simeon. Again she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, now at last my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. So he was named Levi. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, this time I will praise the Lord. So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, give me children or I will die. That is a little bit dramatic. Jacob became angry with her and said, am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children? Then she said, here is Bilhah, my servant, sleep with her so that she can bear children so that she can bear children for me, and I too can build a family through her. So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said, God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and given me a son. Because of this, she named him Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, I have had a great struggle with my sister, and I've won. So she named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, what good fortune. So she named him Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, how happy I am, the women will call me happy. So she named him Asher. During wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the fields and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too? Very well, Rachel said. He can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes. So when Jacob came in from the fields that evening, Leah went out to meet him. You must sleep with me, she said. I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he slept with her that night. God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband. So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have borne him 6 sons. So she named him Zebulun. Some time later, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and enabled her to conceive. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph and said, may the Lord add to me another son. This chapter, the reason I chose this chapter is because it's like a classical case of competition as a result of comparison. And I think us as believers, sometimes we can get into the habit of being manipulative towards the situations in our lives to one up the next person. You see that the next person has something that you don't, and you go out of your way, you walk outside of God's will, and you make something happen for yourself so that you can be like the person that you're comparing yourself to. And then we have the audacity also on top of that to pin the name of God on it, to say, oh no, this definitely has to be God, even though something like giving your servant to your husband to conceive your child isn't something that God would want you to do. And that is very evident. Like, it's not you, when something is moving at God's pace, when it's God's will, you won't have to like force doors open. Right? You won't have to try and find a key to unlock the door that is clearly locked. You'll never have to break it down and unlock it for yourself because you don't hold the key. Some things that I wanted to point out is the difference between when God sees and when man sees, or when flesh sees, when you see. Leah was unloved. I can't imagine, being married to somebody. You're married to somebody and then they wake up next to you and they're like, Joe, having the biggest regrets of their lives, thinking, who is this person that is next to me? And the scriptures describe her as having she's not the prettiest, right? Is what she's described as in the scriptures. So obviously, because she was the less wanted option out of her and her sister, it can brew some feelings of like this void that needs to be filled, where you're constantly chasing after this thing so that you can finally feel loved by it, or this person so that you can finally feel loved by them. That's what insecurity causes stuff like that, causes insecurity. The person that you have been given into marriage to feels like it was a mistake. Like Jacob is fighting with Laban to say, how could you do this to me? Imagine hearing a conversation like that, or knowing that a conversation like that happened. It's obviously going to like bring up feelings of insecurity in your heart, right? So the Lord identified that every time she conceived, she felt like, okay, maybe Jacob will love me now because I've given him the son. She felt like she needed to perform to be chosen by Jacob. And I think with the Lord consistently blessing Leah, I think this happens with me as well, where the Lord will consistently let something happen, not to use that thing to fill the void, because that is not possible, but to show you that the void is there in the first place, until you get to a point where you realize that, oh shucks, this thing that I've been trying to use to fill the void is not working. It's not filling this void that I have in my heart. And I think that was the goal with Leah. But when you're looking on the outside from Rachel's perspective, it's like, oh shucks, like Leah's bearing all these children and I don't even have one of my own with the same husband that we have. And what I wanted to speak to about that specifically is that sometimes we'll see people being blessed with the very things that we want to be blessed with, but we don't know the work that the Lord is doing in that person's heart to expose some things that are happening in their hearts. We just assume that they have a greater amount of favor. On the outside, to Rachel, it would probably look like God favors Leah more because she was able to bear more children for Jacob. That is not at all the point of this. The point is that the Lord is trying to repair in Leah an insecurity that she had by showing her that it's there in the first place, and getting her to a point where she can surrender her heart to the Lord, which is why the fourth son that she conceived, she said, this time meaning, okay, I'm no longer going to point my reference of love to Jacob. This time I'll praise the Lord. You know what? I surrender. I'm just going to give this to the Lord. I'm just going to praise the Lord. And she stopped conceiving, which then again speaks to the fact that this whole thing of her conceiving, if it was just a matter of favor, she would have kept conceiving after that. But because it was a matter of a heart exposure, a posture of our heart is being exposed through these things that the Lord is doing, then she's able to get to a point where she finally sees that what she's chasing after can't fill her void. She has to go back to God. And again, dialing back to what I was saying just now, that sometimes we'll see people being blessed, right? Sometimes we'll see that, oh shucks, like she is always the person that is getting the jobs. She's always the person that's in the relationships. She is always the person that whatever the case may be. Sometimes the Lord is doing a heart work in the very person that you see being consistently blessed with the same thing, to show them that there's a void in your heart that you're consistently chasing after. This is not going to work. I need to show you that this is not going to work by consistently allowing you to be in relationship after relationship after relationship after relationship, to show you that no matter how many relationships you get in, there will still be a void in your heart if you do not fill this by actually submitting yourself to the Lordship of Christ. But in Rachel's eyes, once again, it doesn't look like that. So what does that do? When Rachel saw, see what happens when God sees? When God sees, there's an exposure of the heart. He's not so much after just giving you the blessings or not showing you where your heart is, because your heart is what matters more. What happens when man sees, when flesh sees, when we don't see from a lens that God is operating through? When Rachel saw that she was not bearing children, bearing any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me children or I will die." So, an underlying thing that comes with comparison a lot of the time, obviously, is jealousy. And jealousy, the thing with jealousy is that it results from feeling like you are owed something that somebody else has, right? No matter what it is. Like the examples that we made earlier, maybe it's a job, maybe it's a platform, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's, I don't know, whatever it is that you feel like you deserve. That jealousy is going to be brewed in you if you see somebody else having the thing that you feel like God owes you. And I want to skip a few verses down where now Rachel decides, okay, you know what? The Lord has closed my womb, meaning that I need to take matters into my own hands. I'll give you my servant. Have a kid on my behalf through my servant. That does not make sense. The itch of jealousy and comparison that she had in her heart wasn't going to be scratched by her having a child through somebody else, because it's not her child anyway, there is still that little piece of her that feels that shame that comes, because in this culture, right, if you couldn't bear children, it was the most shameful thing that a woman could experience. That shame was always going to remain unless her child or a child came from her own womb. But to soothe that pain, she manipulated the situation and said, okay, maybe if if something else can be birthed through someone else for me, for my sake, then maybe that void, that feeling of shame will be taken from me, that disgrace will be stripped from me. And that obviously didn't work. To see something happen over a period of years and you're watching someone get what you want over a period of years obviously doesn't feel great. And then you get into a place where you feel like, okay, I need to do this on my own. Because if I don't get my hands involved, this is not going to happen for me. If I don't give myself a yes that God has not given me, if I don't orchestrate something that God clearly has not orchestrated for me, I will have this shame forever. And I'll give you guys an example with myself. For a very long time, for years, I would watch people get into relationships and I'd feel like, oh my gosh, like what is wrong with me? And I'd orchestrate my own things, try to force breaking down the door, convincing men that I am worthy to be a wife. Look at me. I'm like, oh, I can pray. I can, down to the point where I would do evangelistic dating. Do we know what evangelistic dating is? Getting into a relationship with somebody that you are clearly unequally yoked with and trying to convince them to walk that path so that you can chisel for yourself a perfect husband. Even though this person is clearly not equally yoked with you, they don't really care that much for the things of God. And never mind if they actually do, like let's say they do, but they have no interest in you. They clearly keeping you clutchy. They're not giving you the time of day. But when you insist on trying to consistently force this person to see you in a certain light that they don't already see you, which is clearly an indication of the fact that it's not orchestrated by God and you are trying to manipulate a situation in your favor so that you can have what you want, to be like the next person. That is a very dangerous place to be, because you are using somebody else as a metric to measure whether or not God is doing a good job. Comparison is basically a mindset that pushes you to believe that God is not doing enough to be God in your life. He's not doing a good enough job at being God or orchestrating your life, right? So yeah, I think once we get into this posture of comparison, when we feel like, shucks, this person, they're going ahead of me, they're doing this, they're doing that, then we start to manipulate, right? We start to manufacture blessings on our own, forgetting that a blessing that is manufactured, I think this is in the book of Proverbs. But it speaks about how an inheritance obtained too early is not a blessing in the end. When it's not done in God's timing, and when you don't submit something to the Lord, you don't do something through the Lord, it becomes something that crushes you in the end because it's not for you in the first place. So yeah, I don't think it's wise for us to get our hands involved in things that are clearly not, it's not in good timing, right? Because at the end of the day, right, Leah was going to be a child. I mean, Rachel, excuse me. She was going to be a child at the end of the day. But because she felt like she was owed something in the same sort of timing that Leah was, not knowing and understanding that God is doing a different work in Leah's heart. So she needs to bear those children because Leah is the one who feels unloved, and Leah is the one that needs that gap filled by God. Leah is the one that needs to bear those children to show her that there is nothing that she can do to possibly earn Jacob's love. There's nothing that she could do. And so I think something to remember and to keep in mind is that when you see others being, sometimes it's not even about that. Maybe sometimes it's just that it's the Lord's time. Sometimes it's just the Lord's time to do a thing in a person's life, to bless them with a new venture, I guess, or just something new, right? Sometimes it's just their time, but you do not know this person enough, no matter if they're super close to you, super far from you, they're just a social media person, especially when you see these people on social media that consistently get blessed with certain things. You don't know what the Lord is trying to do, in their hearts, right? So coveting after, is that the correct English? Doesn't matter. Coveting after their blessings, or coveting their blessings, trying to make them your own, will put you in a position where your hands go in a kitchen that they do not belong. And now Leah also falls into this whole competition. Mind you, this whole time, she is clearly incredibly fertile. She stopped bearing children, but now it's like the competition has switched. It's now no longer about my womb versus your womb. It's now about my manipulation versus yours, whose manipulation can do more for them. Now Leah also comes in and she says, oh, Zilpah, do you want to sleep with my husband? And it's so funny because Leah in verse 12 of chapter 30, she says, in verse 13, she says, then Leah said, how happy I am when, this is now after Zilpah has born the child. She says, how happy I am. The women will call me happy. The women. So she's now not even looking at herself. She is now trying to seem like she's in a better position for other people. It's no longer for God. It's no longer for herself. It's for the next person. That, oh yes, I finally have this thing. Now everybody else is going to see that I'm happy. Now everybody, it's about the whole basis of comparison is that it is about everybody else. It is about, how can I get ahead of this person? It is about, oh my gosh, this person is going to think I'm so lame because I don't have this kind of thing. Oh my gosh, now I look so lonely. Oh my gosh, now I look so crazy and whatever. For not having what everybody else has. But now that I've manipulated the situation and I have a blessing that somewhat emulates what God would want to give me, oh, the people will call me happy. The people will think, oh, she's so blessed. It becomes about the people eventually. It no longer was about her being loved by Jacob. And now it was about her being seen by the people.